I'm happiest in the saddle.
A fellow sportsman.
I am an FBI agent!
Great Scott!
What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole! Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
Come with me if you want to live.
Hello, and welcome to Retro Ramble. I'm Charlie McGee.
I'm George McGee.
And this time, we're going to be taking a retro ramble on the 1999 film, the sci-fi classic that is The Matrix. Brought to us by the
Wachowskis.
Thank you, George. I'm going to need you to do that every time, by the way. Featuring the man of the moment, Keanu Reeves.
He's so hot right now.
Oh, God, yeah. Carrie-Anne Moss. Lawrence Fishburne.
I think he was, Lawrence Fishburne, not Larry Fishburne.
It's way after he...
Joey Pants.
And, of course, Hugo Weaving. So we will be taking the usual trip down memory lane. We'll be discussing some first memories, what this film means to us.
Its influence on Hollywood blockbuster cinema as a whole, and
martial arts, sci-fi films.
Yeah, even foreign cinema.
And also, it is 20 years old today.
Would you ruddy believe it?
Yes, so hope that doesn't make you feel too old, but there is talk of a Matrix 4 potentially in the works. We don't know.
But there will be showings of they're re-releasing it in 4K.
Yes, looking
to celebrate its 20th anniversary.
So we thought, what better time to go back and revisit this classic. So if you listen to our episodes before, you pretty much know what to expect. It's as George and I are brothers. We go back, we take a look at the films, but before we go any further, here's a quick disclaimer from George on what to expect if you haven't listened before.
A word of warning, we are film lovers, we are not film professionals. So what we do in these podcasts is, I say, we take a look back at these films that we grew up with and have enjoyed over the years. We check and see, do they still hold up? Why they've been so influential? What makes them so good? What might have dated them? And yeah, we just ultimately we have a bit of fun with them. We treat them like an old friend. So sometimes we reminisce, sometimes we take the piss. And on that note, as Charlie and I are quite immature,
at times, we can be serious.
That's true. Well,
but no, we were referring to films of our youth. We were youthful when we watched them, more youthful than we are today.
Certainly.
We obviously have a little bit of fun with them, and we've watched these films. We are picking films that we have watched a lot. George and I are film fans. We come from the northeast of England with bad weather, so we spent a lot of time on the sofa just watching these films, consuming them. This was pre-internet. The internet had only really was just coming to fruition when this film came out.
So dial-up then.
Yeah. And this is one of the closest to present day films that we've done. We've been spending a lot of time in the 80s and 90s. This was 1999. The internet was a thing.
So this is the closest to the future / present day we've been on Retro Ramble.
Yeah.
But yes, ultimately we are going to be going into this film in detail, so there will be spoilers from the off. As you've noticed already, there will be some colourful language, so be mindful if you have children around or people with small ears, tiny minds.
I didn't say fuck or bugger, did you?
Not recently. I say it's a light-hearted look at these films, but we do aim to add some tidbits of trivia as well, so you might learn something new about
That is the
films.
idea, yeah. I mean, we have done some research into this, and we've got a lot to add. We've got our opinions, but this is supposed to inspire you to go back and watch these films again.
Exactly.
So, take the red pill, take the blue pill, just sit back, relax.
Take a bunch of pills, who cares?
It's time for us to go back to The Matrix, so enjoy.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real one?
It's the question that drives us, Neo.
What is the Matrix? It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. You are a slave born into a prison for your mind.
The Matrix is a system, Neo.
That system is our enemy.
Try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague, and we are the cure.
So you're here to save the world?
It seems that you've been living 2 lives.
I've seen an agent punch through a concrete wall. Men have emptied entire clips at them and hit nothing but air. Everyone who has fought an agent has died. But where they have failed, you will succeed.
So what do you need? Guns. Lots of guns.
No one has ever done anything like this.
That's why it's going to work.
Mr. Anders.
What are you trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets?
No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have
to. So, George, as I always ask you, how did we get this amazing...
Where are we? When are we?
And why are you naked? No, how did we get this amazing film that is The Matrix from the lesser known at this point? I don't think they'd done much, the Wachowskis.
Yeah, so this came out summer of 99, was a big summer for blockbuster cinema. The main reason being everyone was super excited about Star Wars Episode 1.
Such high hopes.
Yeah. But yeah, there was also some other, obviously The Matrix came out, the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie, which was a lot of fun. I remember you and I having a lot of fun watching that. So yeah,
wasn't this Austin Powers 2 as well?
Yes, it was. I think, Austin Powers 2 was 99. And
I love that film.
99, I think, was a good year for sort of blockbustery, I say, cinema. I'm sure I'm surprised we haven't got to it sooner. I mean, obviously we did Blade, which was 98. We've done MI2, which was 2000.
Yeah.
But yeah.
This wasn't just the birth of The Matrix, it was DVDs. We were talking about this earlier. If you want to put a finger on where we were back at this point, DVDs had just hit.
Well, yeah, it's quite funny because I think in terms of first memories, whilst my memories of seeing this at the cinema were quite a little bit hazy for various reasons, I remember watching this on video for the first time and being blown all over again. I forgot how much of a complicated story in terms of the philosophy behind it, but I think that was the last video that I probably owned.
I think we had a very similar relationship regarding that, because I just remember, I think I mentioned this on podcast before, about my collection had really got to the hundreds point when I was having to move flats every year for university. And I just remember this is like, DVDs are so much lighter. But yeah, this was one of the last VHS that I remember buying, and then I very quickly, because these were quite expensive purchases for a student back then.
Yeah, it was like 20 quid a go.
Yeah, so to get that, and then I think maybe 6 months later I bought it on DVD as well.
And at the time, DVDs weren't as abundant. They were quite limited releases. Not everything. It took years for everything to become available on DVD, and there's some stuff that never got onto DVD. It's weird. So if you think,
and there's some stuff that should have never gone onto DVD.
But yeah, if you think about it, you're obviously always going to start from nothing. But there wasn't that. It was only the new releases at that time were getting released onto DVD. You wouldn't get. It took a while for the more older stuff to be upgraded.
But as I confessed to George, I did actually, for a very sad amount of time, had no other choice but to watch The Matrix on my PC with PC speakers, because it was the only DVD drive I had. But that was very short lived, because lo and behold, the PlayStation 2 offered a DVD player. But yeah, so that's what I remember this time being, having no money, lots of hangovers, spent blowing my mind watching The Matrix. Whoa, reality bender. Yeah, so I mean that's what it is for me.
It was very much and I do like using this term on this podcast, very much a cultural zeitgeist. It did seem to, I think, as I say, everyone,
something for everyone.
Everyone was massively hyped for Star Wars, but if anything, I think The Matrix was a sleeper hit that came out of nowhere and just blew everyone away.
We've had that recently, haven't we, with some of the blockbusters where I'm not sure if I'm talking about Fallout here, but maybe it was Rogue Nation. Yeah, it was Fallout. I think there was so many other
big films
coming out, and Fallout was quite late into the realm. It's actually one of the best films of the year.
Yeah.
And I think it was actually helped by the fact that people had all of this hype and stuff thrown at other films.
Yeah.
And I think Matrix was quite similar in that respect.
Well, that's it. I mean, especially in this sort of internet era of scrutiny and things like that, it is a rarity for films to be, especially relatively big budget films, to be sleeper hits. But yeah, and just in terms of how this came around, so yeah, this is by the Wachowskis, And I didn't know this until I was doing my research, but I was familiar they had done a film previous to this called Bound. That was a moderate success.
I think I remember. It's got that girl who's in the getaway.
It's about lesbians that rob a bank or rob gangsters or something.
Sounds familiar.
I think it was quite popular with a lot of teenage boys for some reason. They had an agreement with Warner Brothers, so they wrote the script for our good friend Sylvester Stallone and Dick Donner film Assassins, was him versus Antonio Banderas.
I like that film.
It's quite cheesy, but so they wrote the script for that, and as part of that script, the quite famous producer Lorenzo di Bonaventura, he bought the rights to their other scripts. One was Bound, and the other one was The Matrix, as part of that contract. And off the back of Bound being a critical success, they used that momentum to say, well, we want to direct our other script, The Matrix. So quite quickly, again, as all things on Retro Ramble, everything is connected. Producer Joel Silver pops up
at a party,
and he joined the project. So, but even with Joel Silver and Di Bonaventura, who were big producers in Hollywood, on board, Warner Brothers still just didn't have the confidence to. At the time, it was the budget was $60 million. So, in the grand scheme of things, if we're looking about the average summer blockbuster is $200-250 these days. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think about the Marvel films and stuff. So whilst it was a relatively small budget, it was still a lot of money that Warner Brothers weren't comfortable with directing, because I say these guys had only directed one film, and trying to explain The Matrix in an elevator pitch, I suppose, is going to be tricky.
Yeah.
So what they did was they hired a bunch of comic book artists to basically draw a shot-by-shot storyboard of the entire film, and once the studio saw the vision that they had in mind,
right, okay, you've got to go picture, especially with some help from Joel Silver.
Well,
it's gonna be an explosion, and I'm gonna get this guy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, apparently the way they sold it into Joel Silver was that they said they wanted to basically make a manga type film for real.
Yeah.
So, they obviously talked about stuff like Ghost in the Shell, Ninja Scroll, which I'm not familiar with, but they were saying they were the two sort of main.
There's a lot
visuals.
of Ghost in the Shell there, yeah.
Yeah, and Akira as well. So, that was the main thing that got them on board. But to save costs, it was quite savvy of Warner Brothers. They shot the film in Sydney. In Australia. So apparently, I don't know how this works, whether it is just down to location fees or what have you, but so the budget was $60 million based on it being filmed in Australia. But if they'd shot it if it was a US based production, it would have cost around $180 million. So I don't know why it's three
probably
times.
Contributions to the
you got your tax breaks and things like that.
The Film Actors Guild. Sorry, the Movie Actors Guild.
But this, due to the success of The Matrix, it kind of put Australia on the map as a filmmaking hub, and quite a few films have been filmed there recently. I think a lot of the Star Wars films moved to
Mission Impossible 2 a year later.
Mission Impossible 2 I think it was probably still filming around the same time, because it was a very long shoot, as we talked about. Check out our Mission Impossible episode. That was how it came about in terms of getting, as you say, getting the green light. In terms of getting people on board, and there was a very long list of who's who of who was considered, and obviously I will get to that in our regular feature, Coulda, Woulda, Shoulda. But apparently all the actors and actresses on board were asked to, or were required to be able to understand and explain The Matrix. So they were given sort of required reading, psychology and philosophy. So one was Simulacra and Simulation, which is by Jean Bouillard. I think that's my best French impression. Evolutionary Psychology, Out of Control. Yeah, so everyone basically had to read these before going in. And Carrie-Anne Moss commented, she said she had difficulty getting her head around it, but apparently one of the reasons that Keanu Reeves was cast in the role because he got the concept and he threw himself into all the reading. So again, it's that sort of, we always fight Keanu's corner. That could be a future. But
Keanu Corner.
Keanu's Corner. What's Keanu reading this week?
I don't know, but we were hot for him. We had frequent love-ins before he became man of the moment.
Well,
if you go back and check, we love you.
Yes, I mean, we have we've talked about Speed, we've talked about Point Break, and this was another film that kind of sort of regenerated that interest in Keanu Reeves. A lot of people give him crap, but yeah, he got the concept and he threw himself into the whole thing. What was also unheard of for the scope of this film, and I think that makes it quite different, for the time anyway, was in the past with martial arts movies, you've always had a talented martial artist doing the film. So, we've talked about, Van Damme movies, Jet Li, Jackie Chan. But this is the first time that... Seagal.
Because he's such a well-qualified martial artist, honestly.
Indeed. But yeah, this was the first time that the principal actors went through
3 months, or
it was 4 to 6 months of training.
4 to 6 months of training, yeah.
Of full fight training, and it shows.
Well, because George and I obviously dabbled a little bit with Foxy Boxing, also known as Taekwondo. Kind of around, it was after these films. I wouldn't say it was inspired, but it was around the same when we were young. But we can relate to the fact that you need to build the muscle in the legs to be able to pull off the moves. Yes, there's wire work in this, but you actually have
jump
to
around.
Yeah, but you have to train for 3 months to build the muscles in your legs to be able to actually maneuver, and in your hips.
Yeah,
that's the most important thing, is so you can get that knee high enough.
Well, the fight choreography was done by a legendary guy called Wu Ping Yung, and he worked on loads of Asian martial arts films. And what he did, because he had his doubts about whether the actors were up to the task, and he actually let the actors, he built sort of their moves around their abilities.
Yeah.
So apparently,
you can see that definitely with Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah,
definitely. Sorry.
So apparently, he built on Keanu Reeves' diligence, Lawrence Fishburne's resilience, Hugo Weaving's precision, and Carrie-Anne Moss's feminine grace.
Yeah, some of the I think across the trilogy, some of her fight scenes are the most impressive over time. The obviously the Smith and Neo ones, which we'll get to later, are impressive for other reasons, but some of her choreography is just it's as you say, so graceful to watch.
Yeah, so I think that's it. I think that was another reason why this film sort of blew people's minds. Yeah, there's some really interesting philosophical, psychological ideas in there. There's some amazing special effects, but just in terms of the pure fight choreography, seeing, obviously people like, Carrie-Anne Moss, this was kind of her major sort of film debut. I think she'd done a bit of TV beforehand, but seeing people like Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne move around like that on screen is,
it was insane back then. So, should we jump into the film? Take a retro ramble down memory lane?
Yes, let's do that.
So yeah, we talked about it briefly just there. You got the opening scene, which actually, sorry, you mentioned to me that we've seen this cityscape before in a very similar film.
Yes, so that rooftop chase where Trinity's being chased by police and by agents across the rooftops was actually, I say this was filmed in Australia, as was the film a year prior, Dark City, which is another sort of favourite of ours at the time, which deals with very similar themes.
Yeah.
In terms of a chosen man controlling
through willpower,
developing powers and fighting against the system,
and being in a fake world,
and in an artificial world. So if you haven't seen Dark City, we would recommend you check it out, and we might cover it at some point.
Also, if you're a fan of Crystal Maze and you want to see
it's got Richard O'Brien, Rufus Sewell, but
before he went completely hammy villain.
Yes,
love Rufus Sewell.
But so whilst Dark City is sort of quite Gothic inspired, and that rooftop chase with Trinity reused some of the sets from Dark City, and people have tried to accuse The Matrix of ripping off Dark City.
Well, it was obviously very aware. It was obviously very...
but the fact is the Wachowskis had been working on the Matrix idea for over 4 years, so it'd been in development long before Dark City was. I think it's just a bit like The Raid and Dread. I think they're just similar ideas that happen to come out around the same time.
Which tends to happen. And sometimes they're like, well, we'll ride on the momentum that the other film is creating. So we'll get 2 meteor films in 1 year, we'll get 2 westerns and things like that. So I like the way that it sort of drip feeds the special effects. It seems like, you're introduced, you got cops, you got jurisdiction, you got the feds turning up,
jurisdiction.
You've got what seems to be what's
run of the mill.
Yeah, with this, and then suddenly she's running around the wall. You're like, that's a pretty cool trick. And then there's the jump. There's that first jump, and the guy who was the cop whose eyes were seeing through. That's impossible. So. It's all very, she's jumping through the air, but it's gradual. It's gradual, but we're still not really sure what's going on.
Whether it is just a hyper-stylized film. But then we get to see Mr. Reeves himself.
Mr. Anderson.
Who's dreaming in front of a computer. Symbolism.
Yeah.
It was, we've talked about this in a podcast of the time, being the time, a glorious future where everything was on mini-disc.
Yeah, we've dreamed of a future where everything was on mini-disc.
I still dream of a future where everything is on mini-disc.
I've got some great music on mini-disc somewhere.
Still do. Still got them in a bag. I think I watched this on Blu-ray for the first time, and I really that green sort of tint colour
stands out, stylized.
Very. I almost, I don't know if it's the DVD transfer, but it was almost a little too jarring. So essentially, when they're in the Matrix, everything has a green tint. When they're in the real world, everything has a blue tint. Mm-hmm. And apparently, when they're in some of the training programs, it has a yellow tint. So it's like a neutral ground.
But the lips look very red, and the skin looks whitey green and
goth.
Yeah, goth.
But yes, we have Keanu doing some basically looking for Morpheus.
We're not sure why, but Trinity says to him later on that feels that there's something not right.
Yeah, he's been itching. Something's been eating away at him.
Oh, sorry, and then obviously she starts talking to him through the computer.
Yes, that's true.
Who's been stealing your thoughts?
Who's been to follow the White Rabbit?
I'm telling you, Philip K. Dick would have loved this film.
He's getting messages of significant importance through his toaster computer,
just like Philip K. Dick.
And yes, we've got some. This film was really ahead of its time. It still looks amazing. But I like the mini discs. There's things that date it, like the tech metal rave club scene. You've got Prodigy playing, lots of black leather.
I still go to clubs like that. You don't?
Not as much these days. One thing I did notice is how young Keanu looks, but he hasn't aged a day, so it doesn't. But he still looks quite. Maybe it's just the lack of beard.
Yeah, no, I think he's the guy who never ages. But he looks such a dreamboat.
It's such a dreamboat.
And, it's like they're such a good couple already. I think we should talk about, in that club when they first meet, she looks amazing. And I never had a thing for goths, but it's like she is dressed as a goth, but looks just like stunning in every way. And it's her delivery.
She's brilliant in this. When, I hadn't watched this for a good couple of years, I reckon. And I forgot how good Carrie-Anne Moss is.
Oh, she holds a lot of the dialogue together. If you think the dialogue that she has with a lot of the major characters throughout, and the exposition, the way that she delivers it, and the music and everything, and she's essential to this.
And it made me think, storyline. What has she done for us lately?
Apart from Jessica Jones.
Yeah, I think that's the most recent. She's good in that, but it's just a shame. I think she was. Obviously, she cropped up in, her and Joe Pantoliano, Joey Pants, turned up in Memento. The following year.
It sounds cynical to say, but I have a feeling she actually just went off and had a family. But I think that could be explained why she might have, a lot of actresses decide to do that. But she's a great actress, great in this, and great in Memento as well. Quite darker role.
Well, the other person that we're introduced quite quickly on, who I think it was the first time that we had discovered him, but he was an established Australian actor, was Mr. Hugo Weaving.
As you can see, we've had our eye on you for some time now, Mr. Anderson.
The delivery, the guy's voice, everything he says. I mean, obviously me especially, I've watched this film probably more than many other films that I've watched a lot. This ranks up. This is my, you always talk about, after the pub, go to sleep.
Post-pub movie.
Post-pub movie. This was my go-to because I didn't have that many DVDs. So this X-Men or South Park. So yeah, this film, I know this film backwards. I was watching this recently, like as we do in preparation for this podcast, and I know every line of dialogue, and it just gets better. He is literally chewing the script. Everything he says is just so well delivered, and it's no surprise that not shortly after this, but from this film, he has gone on to be, an iconic villain in everything from Captain America to Lord of the Rings to there's too many to mention.
Transformers, I think he's the voice of Megatron. But yeah, unfortunately, so I think he's a phenomenal actor, and if anything,
slightly typecast.
Yeah, a little bit typecast, but yeah, it's amazing that I say he has.
You don't see him breaking down in tears in many films.
Well, no, but he had some really interesting roles prior to this. So
when he was younger.
I forget that he was in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and stuff like that. So it's just like seeing Agent Smith and General Zod and Mike from Neighbours / Memento all campered up is quite jarring.
Isn't he in The Bank Manager in it's not Young Frankenstein, I want to say. Is it Young Frankenstein?
Young Einstein.
He's Young Einstein. I think because that's Australian, and he goes to the bank for some reason, and I think he's the bank manager. I'm pretty sure. It's a very young Hugo Weaving.
Yeah. But yeah, he, as you say, his
everything he says,
his delivery. Morpheus is the most dangerous man alive, and you've got a good record. You help your landlady carry out her garbage.
Everything. Just, you could, Liz, it's just like, no, we're not going to just quote The Matrix, but this is how iconic these lines have become. But he envisages everything.
But that's it, as you say, he's been typecast pretty much as a villain ever since, but he's made such an impression in this film.
This has got to be his best role. This is his Darth Vader. This is the fact that, like James Earl Jones, a lot of it is because of his delivery, of his voice, of his posture. Yeah. It's just, oh my God, Hugo Weaving's in the room. This looks like a serious meeting of elves. It's like you put him in a room and it has that effect, the sort of the James Earl Jones effect. But there's so much more to it. And he works well with all of the characters. There's a lot of throughout this film, there's a lot of one-on-one, that we were talking about this beforehand, that as we move through this film, there's a lot of, Neo and Trinity. And then, we're moving into this area where it's Neo and Agent Smith.
Yeah.
And then obviously he's going to be captured and then rescued, and then it's going to be Neo meets Morpheus. There's a lot of this.
Hello, Neo.
And Morpheus is... Are we quoting this film too much?
No, I know we are quoting this a lot, but there's a brilliant bit where just like, I think the agents are coming for Neo, and he's on the phone to Morpheus. He's like, shit. And Morpheus just goes, yes.
That scene is so brilliantly done. The choreography of him having to get out of an office. And there's a lot of jokes I can relate to, because I think... for future, we're talking about, the age I was at. I was university and then I was working. And so this film was very close to me through that time. And I was actually working in
Didn't you have the Matrix flip-down phone? Banana phone?
Maybe. To be exact, I didn't have the one that's in the phone. I had the one that Nokia released after the phone came out. It was the first WAP phone, which
That's
was
mobile internet, kids.
Wireless
before
access.
3G.
Yeah, before
2G.
It was 2. I think it was
1G.
Was it 1.5G? Anyway, it was slow, and you couldn't book cinema tickets. You couldn't watch football highlights, even though they told you could. But yeah, I had that. Basically, I wanted to be Neo. But the thing is, I was working in an office. Is selling, in an IT environment, so almost in a cubicle, and could completely relate to this. It was
So you were silently hoping that Lawrence Fishburne would just call you up one day.
I wanted the FedEx guy to come in, and I could open it up and for it to ring. So no, that's a great bit of the fact that if you were being guided, you could actually.
And it's almost a bit like a PlayStation game, isn't it? It's like, go left. No, go now.
Or Nightmare
left. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to kill you. Yeah, put with a bin on your head.
But it's a great bit of tension, and there's also a bit of realism, because it's like, this is too easy. It's like, he's just going to help you get out, and it's like, no, bringing it back to the real world. Thomas Anderson doesn't have the confidence to yet, and it's about his arc to do what Morpheus is saying. So he gets caught, he gets interviewed, he gets
that thing put in his belly button,
which is a little bit of a horror. There is a little bit squeamishy.
There's a little bit of body horror in there.
That's, I think, for me, the only bit of, also looking back, the only bit of ropey CGI, and that's being, but that is being
the Sentinels and all the squiddy type things.
I would say the Sentinels are not actually that bad.
Yeah,
I don't know about the copy. It's that one thing that they put in his stomach,
mini squid,
the
trace program
that looks a bit. That hasn't dated as well, and I say that just putting, because we're not really going to talk about it today, but I still believe that the effects in this film look better than the Reloaded film in parts. I think it stands up better. I think there's
it's almost because they were trying to do too much.
There's that scene which is very impressive with all of the Smiths in the second film, where you can see it that it's a CGI Neo spinning around, and it looks
a bit too rubbery.
Yeah, it's a bit jarring. But anyway, getting back to this, you've got this brilliant, where it's great exposition that we always like to focus on in this, that just through this interrogation between Agent Smith and Anderson, that what's going on, you're finding out a little bit more about Thomas Anderson's situation, about Morpheus, and it's like there's the mystery around Morpheus before they actually, and then obviously we get the meeting. Yeah,
but we are very much, and I'm sure you've said this previous, like we're talking about in Big Trouble, we're looking through Jack Burton's eyes. In this, we are very much in the same...
What the hell is going on?
Yeah, the same position as Neo. Is like, we want to know what do you want to know what the Matrix is? Yes, we do.
Yes, just get us to it.
Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there is that whole bit with that has, entered popular culture,
God, how many memes have you seen with the red pill and blue pill?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, it's amazing to see that whilst it's big ideas, it's very confidently shot, this film.
I think that's what I'm glad you brought it up, because that's what I want to say. Everyone's making these funny memes about, I wish I'd taken, and there's the joke in the film, I wish I'd taken
the blue pill.
Yeah. But it's that shot. It's the fact that you see two Keanu's and the two hands
in the reflected glasses,
very cool glasses with no arms.
Yeah, there's some really slick cinematography. Obviously the Wachowskis have been quite open on their influences in terms of that manga aesthetic, that sort of a bit Blade Runner-y, like it's constantly raining.
Yeah.
Lots of like that light reflection, lots of red lights, and
what everyone's wearing, even how they hold themselves. I don't know if you've noticed.
I'm amazed at Lawrence Fishburne's pose. How do you fold your arms behind your back? That must be quite painful.
Folding them like the way he does as well.
I don't know if it's me, and in terms of like, obviously we've consumed a lot of like
Joel Silver.
A lot of Joel's, no, but a lot of the trailers, but it feels like there's a lot of dialogue that's like trailer-esque dialogue, like, sort of fasten your seatbelt, Dorothy, and all that sort of type stuff. But I don't know if it's just because we've watched this film so many times.
I think it's probably because we've watched. I mean, this film is probably getting close to 100 viewings. I think I've definitely seen this film 50 times.
Easily.
And that is an obsessive amount. I mean, that's why I know it so well. And like, I think I don't know if we were talking about this because George and I like to obviously prepare each other for what we're going to be talking about. But when they're going in and out of the Matrix, we talked about the filters before, but there's actually a sound that they made. There's a little sound cue to tell you when they're in the Matrix and
like an electronic.
Yeah, and there's a little fuzz on the camera as well. So yeah, we've picked up everything. So I think, but it's like if you say anything so many times, it sounds weird to you.
But it does. It is still quite jarring, especially in this sort of second act bit where it's that big reveal of Morpheus, doing that very clever exposition of what's happened. The fact that where the humans got to a certain point where the actual real year is 2199, and we got to a certain point with technology. They were not sure, again, a bit Terminator 2-esque in terms of the machines fighting back. They're not sure who struck first. But it's very much, it's jumping back and forth, and it's quite, I suppose it's intentionally, but disorientating. And then...
once again, seeing it as Neo is.
Yeah, there's that trace program, that sort of bad trip. Where
we've all been there. In a disused house, you take a pill, and suddenly reality starts folding in on itself.
Something starts crawling up your arm. And it's so cold. But it's very, very it's very confusing and makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And then that big reveal when Neo wakes up.
Welcome to the real.
The desert of the real. But when he wakes up in the pod, and I remember it's like, what's going on? Where are we? You know, what's happened to Keanu? And there's some terrifying imagery, and very, very powerful imagery, like the farms of
getting that
pods.
tube out of your esophagus.
Yeah,
it's like it's all the way down there, and you see him pull it out,
and the whole thing with seeing the baby with the fluid. There's some really terrifying imagery, but it's as you were saying off air earlier. It's a brilliant concept, and I think that's one of the differences between this and Terminator 2, which is obviously one of our favourite films as well, is in this instance the machines have a motivation. It's not just world domination or retaliation or superiority. The fact that the fact that we've blackened the skies. So they turn to humans for as Lawrence Morpheus brilliantly puts it, by holding up some lovely product placement of a Duracell battery
without showing the Duracell logo, because that would be too blatant.
Yeah,
you have to let it all go, Neo. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind.
So it's a brilliant concept, and I think that's why again it stands up to repeat viewings. There's a lot to take in, and yes, obviously there is amazing special effects, there's amazing kung fu, which brings us on to Neo and Morpheus are going to fight.
Morpheus fight Neo. Yeah, and what I think, just to go back to first memories, there was some controversy around this film when it first came out about, and I think this was the first time I heard about this film, was because this was back when films would be released sooner in the US, still back in 99. So there'd been this film in the US featuring Keanu Reeves. He's wearing a trench coat. There was links with certain shootings in the US.
Columbine.
And that was the first I ever heard of The Matrix. And then the second thing I saw was on some... Do you remember MTV when it did play music? It was some sort of
behind the scenes
doc on the movie part, and it's Morpheus and Neo in the dress that they're in the sort of in the Chinese dojo,
robes,
in their robes, having a fight. I'm like, what? This can't be the same film. And that was when that piqued my interest. So that was before it had been released here. I wasn't like you, consuming all of the film industry knowledge,
just watching the trailer on repeat.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is when you start. The world building is complete. You've had him taken out, and then we're going back in. This is a training program, So, and then we get what I think is I think this is probably one of my favorite fights in the film. I think
in
any film. I mean, just because the music, it's the propeller heads, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
The music is amazing. And
propeller heads is the
that's the lobby scene.
The lobby scene.
Yeah. So,
but no, the thing I love about this, and again, you and I have talked about this, and I think it's kind of sort of creeped into when we were doing Taekwondo together, but it's all the poses.
Yeah.
Where they stop and they will just do a pose, and it's completely over the top.
Keanu's delivery of those poses is amazing. Because you see there's like a mixture. He's like doing it exactly as you should by moving his body, but there's also like this thing in his face going, look at this. This is amazing.
And I love the fancy footwork that Lawrence Fishburne has, where he just does a quick sort of switching his legs around and stuff.
But then you start to see the reality bend, the fact that it suddenly gets very manga-esque in that the knee goes through the floor, that they can run...
And how fast he can move.
Yeah, and then it gets... And you're like, whoa. But it's not too long a scene. It could go on and on and on. But we're very quickly taken to the jump program.
The woman in the red dress.
Yeah, so there's a lot of... And it's like training montage.
Yeah. But it is very good how they very much do that passage of time, and in terms of the fact that he wakes up in the pod completely bald, no eyebrows, and they're showing that passage of time of his scars are covering up, his hair's growing, and the fact that he has to train and get himself up to become this force of nature. So yeah, we've got some more sort of backstory to the real world. So obviously they're on the ship, the Nebuchadnezzar. There's the Sentinels, which I'm not sure is a reference or homage to the Sentinels from the X-Men, or is just a coincidence. Who are a killing machine designed with one purpose: search and destroy. Technically, two purposes.
Just going to put that in there.
Just going to ruin your day. And then I suppose that we are jumping towards sort of end of second act with Cyrus the Virus.
No, not that one.
Jerry Pants is willing to trade it all in for the juiciest looking steak you've ever seen.
Well, yeah, we're getting more plot, and we're also getting the
jumping between real world and fake world is just like, whoa, hang on, what's going on?
Well, yeah, it's the fact that it's sort of greed, it's the human nature, it's the devil's advocate.
How does he load himself into the program?
Well, it has to be on the Nebuchadnezzar, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but usually don't they need the operator? That's
the weird thing that isn't explained.
Never addressed.
Yeah, that he somehow, or maybe he makes a deal, but it is making a deal. It's the very, going back to the Christ analogy, there's the making the deal with the devil thing. It's like, and you'll put me back in. Yep, I don't want to be somebody famous. Is it anything you want? Yeah, and it's like, we just want Morpheus, and whether or not we keep our deal is they want to get it.
Remember nothing.
Yeah, they just want to get into Zion, and you're like, what's Zion?
Just listen to some Bob Marley. Then we get the Oracle scene. And I forget the apologies, I can't remember the name of the actress playing it, but she's a really good actress with very little sort of dialogue and screen time, very charismatic.
Yeah, very maternal.
And I think sadly, she died halfway through the filming of the sequel, so they sort of all of a sudden replace her with a different actress.
And
an inferior actress.
And they explain it in the film. They're like, say, I take many different forms, sort of thing. Because I think she's in the second one, but she's in the second one, but not in the third one. Yeah, but no, she's
again more iconic dialogue. There is no spoon bending motherfucker, motherfucking spoon lover.
Are you having a go at Yuri?
Yeah, Yuri, who's
have you turned into Michael Badass?
I love it's such a minor point, but I love that whole thing of deja vu being.
Yeah, that's a glitch in the Matrix.
And again...
That's become popular...
lexicon. Yeah, it is. It's a glitch in the Matrix. It's funny how so much stuff, there is no spoon, glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah, if you want to know how big this film is, it's the fact that has entered public lexicon that people actually say, maybe this is the Matrix. People... It's become its own thing now.
Yeah, and you see, again, you were talking about memes before. You see memes of where there's two separate people dressed completely identically but aren't together, and it's just like, oh, must be a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah.
So then,
we're getting a bit more plot. So we've got the double cross, the rat that is Cypher, and the fact that this meeting with the Oracle. And yes, this is once again we revisit the philosophical undertones. Know thyself, and about chance and the
sacrifice.
But before that, it's like would you have broken it had I not told you? And that's touched on again. I'd say that's the only really interesting thing about the sequels, apart from some amazing kung fu, because they do fall apart a little bit. Is the philosophy still is quite interesting in that? Yeah, is about the role of fate. Is it free? If everything is predetermined, like if you imagine infinity and time, if everything is predetermined, are you actually in control? And it's like, well, does it actually matter? And it's that thing that they talk about in the second that free will was the only way to make people accept the program.
That it was real.
Was the
well, that's the thing. That Smith goes on about the fact that they created a perfect utopia, but people wouldn't accept it. People need misery in their lives to make it feel real.
Entire fields were lost. Yeah, but it's true that. But that is a very interesting philosophical question. In that, do we need to have the rough and the smooth? It is the duality of man. So, but before you know it, we've got another action scene. So it's a very good.
Where they're punching through walls.
Yeah,
Morpheus is in the corner kicking people.
I'm sorry, I just love the choreography choreography when he's taking on Smith, there is a point where, and this is very visual, and he's just kind of like, it looks like a bit of a bitch fight. He's kind of slapping his hands away, but very good choreography. And as we were saying before, playing to his strengths of what he can deliver. And there is some wire work. There's some cool kicks.
There is some wire work before he just sends in the SWAT team to beat this shit out.
Yeah, because I also getting very much into the minutiae, but there is a lovely point in that when the SWAT team come into the room, he takes the first one out, and then it's the other guys. So it's actually, unlike Van Damme, take him on one at a time. They all just grab him, and it's actually quite realistic. So, and then we're very quickly pushed into Act 3, aren't we?
Act 3, which is very much, and I think in terms of when I was looking through the sort of the critical reviews on release, and I think that's where some people felt it like it's
too much.
Yeah, it goes overboard on the action and all that sort of philosophy, psychology, allegory gets sort of shunted away for action spectacle. But what action spectacle it is.
Can't think of, we talked about it before, there is Terminator 2 and there is The Matrix, and if you think about sci-fi action film rather than intellectual sci-fi and space set sci-fi and fantastical sci-fi, these two, it's set in modern day experiences. There's the I think our friends over at Exploding Helicopter would have a lot to say about that helicopter going into the building.
I love that explosion
because it's an amazing explosion, but two, it's showing you what it would look like in the Matrix, because the programs would have to be processing.
It's buffering.
Yeah, it's buffering.
But yeah, that's it. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves. But again, there's the more iconic dialogue of, we have a little bit of the switch between the wonderful Hugo Weaving, interrogating Morpheus, some cracking dialogue. I hate this place.
It's the smell.
Guns, lots of guns, which has been obviously referenced in recently in John Wick 3.
Word for word by Keanu himself.
Well, I mean,
but they could have played with it.
We're going to, I suppose, we'll talk about this at the end. But obviously no Matrix, no John Wick 3, no John Wick series. It's that simple. However, you've got one of the scenes, and thank God for DVDs, that lobby scene. How many times
we would have burnt through the VHS the amount of times we watched that.
Because I think we did just skip to that scene so many times on DVD, because it's such a masterclass, and it is a bit like, as I say, it's a bit like a computer game. It's like, okay, you've got to get past all these guards to get to the next level.
Yeah,
and that's when the John Woo influences kick in, guns in both hands, diving around, rarely reloading.
More propeller heads booming in the background.
Yeah, but it is just stunning action choreography.
It's so physical and visceral.
Everything's exploding.
Yeah, it's just all the slabs because they're all getting shot, and there's this. It's jumping between, normal pace to sped up to slow mo.
Yeah,
and you really get a feel for, and you're seeing both. Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss, doing brilliant, and he's going through all of the weapons, and she's doing some great moves, but we get to see everything.
My favourite is him doing the cartwheel and then picking up the M16 and shooting people whilst still doing the cartwheel.
It's ridiculous, and I think one of the highlights that I'll never forget was playing The Path of Neo on the PlayStation 2 when you get to do that, when you get to go in to that scene as Neo and do the lobby scene, and you actually can do the whole thing. It obviously doesn't look the same. But no, a great scene that builds up a lot of tension, and I think when you're in the cinema, because we saw this both at least twice, maybe 3 times at cinema, there was definitely a lot of people breathing out when they get into the lift. It's over, because it's
a bit, it is like that. A sign of good action cinema is that relief, that exhaustion. It's a bit like watching The Raid. It's a bit
Mission Impossible,
Fury Road, Mission Impossible, and our good friend Mr. Wick.
Yeah, so they're in the lift, they're on the rooftop. We've got this is the first time, and this would have been like homaged again and again in Shrek, and that was just a year later.
We're talking about bullet time now.
Yeah, we're talking about the bullet time shot, one of the most groundbreaking developments in camera work.
So according to IMDb, by the middle of 2002, so 3 years later, the bullet time sequence had been spoofed in over 20 different films.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
or
that's
spoofed or homaged. I mean, if you think about, obviously, was it maybe a year or so later? Yeah, 2 years later, maybe Swordfish, that amazing opening with the explosion that's done in bullet time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a homage as to a utilization of the technology that was created. I'd say the homages are the ones where he's bending over and the cameras, because there was a lot
of Scary Movie where he does his back in. But yeah, so in terms of that, I'm just going to give you a little bit of trivia about this. So there was apparently the inspiration again was taken from manga, from Akira, and apparently the effect had been done in some music videos and I think a Gap advert before. So Michel Gondry, who did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind,
very famous French director,
réalisateur, and he's done a few music videos as well. So the effect had been used in that, but it never been done with movement. So it was just like almost like 3D still photography.
Yeah.
So the camera would pan around, but the person wouldn't be moving. So usually, I think it was on an Apple advert as well, or it might be in Gap, where they jump up in the air, they freeze, and the camera pans around, and then they don't move. But so how they did it, they tried actually doing it on a dolly, so having a camera on a track moving very quickly, and they were just ruining the tracks. They weren't getting the shot. So they actually it was actually quite clever what they did. I mean, you've probably seen, because it is one of the most famous special effects shots in history.
And I may have watched the extras on the DVD a few times
on your PC before you put on X-Men or Deep Blue Sea. Oh, we didn't talk about Deep Blue Sea. But yeah, essentially it was lots of still cameras placed in a circle to capture, and then they digitally remove all the still cameras and map in a 3D image. So yeah, it's phenomenal at how the level of detail they go in. I mean, we'll share links online, but
and they're worth watching, because it's interesting to see even how much of that is done today. I don't know if you've seen with the recent Avengers Endgame, there was some great footage of some of the final scenes in that, and there's a lot of stuff that you can tell that there's green screens at the back and there's cameras that are in circles, and you can tell that that this technology still, a lot of it is still being used today.
Well, yeah, I suppose it's all part of that whole Avatar thing of creating virtual cameras that you can record from any angle in a space, once you're motion capturing.
How long is it going to be before we've got those little drones like in Blade Runner 2049? The clicky things that just float and record.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
That's what we need just for making films.
Well, 2049? Yeah. Soon enough.
Oh, it's nice. Okay.
So yeah, it is no surprise that the film did win Best Visual Effects. So the main guy behind the effects is John Gator. But up against
Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, up against episode 1 and Lost, because obviously same year. But yeah, as you say, the name Bullet Time is being coined from The Matrix.
How did you do that?
Do what?
You moved like they do. I've never seen anyone move that fast.
I think there's some very clever blink and you miss it. Well, it's not that fast, but the fact that he squares off against an agent, unloads both of his guns, and you see it in real time.
Yes.
So you see the agent go everywhere, and he's like, Trinity? Yeah. And then we get the slow down version of a beginner's version of it, which is accidental. It's brilliantly done.
Phenomenal.
And he even gets hit. Yes,
just grazed slightly.
Yeah, just for a little bit of realism.
So then, yes, Trinity steals a helicopter. Well, she uploads. That's another thing. Complete wish fulfillment. I want to know how to fly a helicopter. Oh, quick upload.
I know how to ride it. Yeah.
And yeah, it's this is a phenomenal bit of action set piece, because you've got the helicopter flying through. You've got Neo firing a minigun into the building and
destroying the building.
I'm still amazed how he managed to take out the whole building but doesn't hit Morpheus. But I suppose
he's the one.
He is the one.
He's Batman. Sorry, he's the one.
You're seeing there's a brilliant shot from underneath where you're seeing the helicopter blades spinning slowly. You're seeing the bullets just rain down.
It's beautiful. With the rain.
It's raining inside.
Bloody fire hydrants.
Yeah, and then as we touched on before, that whole explosion where it ripples, it explodes out. That is a good explosion. And don't get me wrong, I love an explosion.
And you've got obviously Morpheus, the rescue of Morpheus. How do they storyboard that? It's like, so wait a minute, so the helicopter's going down She jumps out.
Well, that's it. Yeah, so they get Morpheus, and then you're actually seeing
a helicopter crash.
You're seeing them flying through Sydney, which is amazing. Again, I think they had to really push to get the permits to fly through a city centre, and then obviously seamlessly cutting it into him just going to dropping Morpheus, and then that whole moment where he shows off he's the one with that whole.
But I don't know about you, but I mean, being honest, there was a lot of this at the time when going to see it at the cinema, and I think there's been the only film I can think that's similar to this, or two films, both by the same director, are Inception and Interstellar. When people go to see them, there's this group who say, yeah, but did you get it? Did you get everything? And I have to hold my hands up when it comes to this part of The Matrix that I didn't get that bit, because it's slowed down. I think when you first watch this film, the bits where he's slowed down, I didn't really get the first time round. That he was moving super fast. I got the fact because we were so slow-mo so abundant in film. You're used to seeing slow-mo. I was like, oh, it's just slow-mo. What I didn't get, and that's why I was making that point about you see how the agent moves, is the fact that
Plus, that doesn't look as good.
No, but it's almost like it would be interesting to see him if you saw him do it in real time. It would look all sped up and wrong. But I didn't get that.
It'd be like one of those inflatable things at the side of the roadside. Those floppy inflatable,
like
people.
At car dealerships. Yeah, it'd be like that. But yeah, so it's interesting, and there was a lot of that going on for this film. The first time round, there were people who were like, "Oh yeah, I got everything the first time." It was like, "Did you really? I'm not sure you got that bit."
So again, we have got that fight between Smith and Neo in the subway, which is brutal. There's like they're slamming each other into buildings, punching holes out the wall. There's the great finger jab into the throat.
That's brilliant.
And there's actually there's a scene where Neo piles Agent Smith into the roof of the subway.
Well, that's the closer, isn't it? It's how he gets away.
And so just to give you a bit of reference on John Wick. So one of the directors of John Wick and the sole director of John Wick 2 and 3 is Chad Stahelski, and he was Keanu Reeves' stunt double for The Matrix. So that's how they got to know each other, and he carried out that scene where Neo slammed into the
because it's wire work,
and apparently he broke his ribs, knees, and dislocated a shoulder.
All to give us that iconic.
But yeah, as I say, I mean, Stahelski's been quite open and said, I've learned all my tricks, all my filmmaking from working on the Matrix movies, from showing how involved,
which angles work, what you can get away with, what the audience wants to see.
As you were saying, in terms of the storyboarding, that the fact that the Wachowskis had storyboarded everything, and they knew their action scenes in and out. They weren't like the Bond films are guilty of, that they'll get in these acclaimed directors, but then all the action will be done by a second unit. It'll be by a stunt team, effectively. Whereas the Wachowskis and Stahelski know exactly what they want and how action drives the story forward.
Yeah,
rather than action for the sake of it.
And they're on site, and they're like and you can see that in. Did Stahelski have Chad, as I think he will now be known? Did he have anything to do with Atomic Blonde? Was that?
That's I think that's David Leitch, who was the co-director of John Wick. So John Wick 1 was directed by David Leitch and Chad Stahelski.
Right.
And I think David Leitch has gone on to do Atomic Blonde and Deadpool 2.
Yeah, because the fight scenes in very much, you see Charlie's kicking ass. Yeah. But there's some fights in that which are very reminiscent, very realistic, very physical. You can definitely
brutal.
Brutal fight scenes.
But yeah, in terms of it moving the story forward, this is the first time that they've always ran from the agents, and this is the first time he makes a stand.
But he makes a stand, but then he has to run.
And then
so it is that fact that they can't be killed.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the fact he slams them into the wall. He's run over by a train, but then they obviously take another form, another body over, and run.
But I remember giggling at the time because, as I say, I was working in IT, working on software,
working on your escape,
working on my escape from the Matrix that I wasn't actually in. No, but I mean, I was a sales guy working with programmers, and there's just that funny thing. Who are the agents? It's like they're programmers, evil programmers.
But there's some great sort of raised stakes. So you have that flip between the real world of Morpheus and Trinity. They've got out the Matrix, but the Sentinels are closing in. They've got the a hand over the EMP button, whereas Neo's just trying to get to the phone in time.
Yeah, and unfortunately for him, it's a phone that Agent Smith knows all too well. So he gets the jump on him.
Again, it took me quite a few viewings to work out it's the same hotel as the opening scene.
Yeah, because I think I probably remember
because I'll be seeing it during the day and during the night, so it was a bit confusing.
But and then we get the
wom.
A great end to I'd say it's a very satisfying end, and I think that's why.
And obviously the music raises up; it goes very orchestral and
it's triumphant, and I think it's a satisfactory end that deserved a better sequel, because it stands so alone. And I loved seeing Reloaded at the cinema. I mean, I was blown away at the time by gave you everything you wanted. I think we may get to them in a very shortened version later on.
Yeah, I think we will
when we've run out of good films. No,
we probably will. Well, let's not go into it in too much detail in case we do approach it. But I think. Yeah, it is very much, sequelitis of let's bring everyone back, let's raise the roof in terms of the action scenes. And I think, if anything, it just got too bogged down by its own philosophy. There was a whole pretentiousness of the architect, ergo, vis-a-vis, concordantly.
That's what I love about The Matrix, how contained it is.
Yeah.
It's like how you've got the brilliant, and I know some people didn't like it, but the roller coaster ride of Act 2 merging into Act 3, all of that action, all piled up, and then there is the fact that he's going to die. He gets shot, and it's all over. And then you've got, once again, Carrie-Anne Moss delivering the final piece of the philosophy is that you are the one, sort of thing.
And I was destined to love you.
One almost loves Neo. And then, him standing up, and you get to see the Matrix.
Yeah. All the
code, and that's cool. It's a cool effect. Yeah. And then he basically Superman's inside of Agent Smith, and he explodes.
And then we've got Neo delivering some cool lines whilst, that sort of repetition of the screen. I know who's he talking to? Oh no, he's talking to the agents, isn't he? He's like, I'm coming. I'm basically going to shake your shit up.
Yeah.
And then, we get Rage Against the Machine, which is, canny play on words.
So, does that bring us neatly and nicely to Coulda, Woulda, Shoulda? Should we release Jeff and Celine?
Yes, because I may be sometime.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Okay, get us cracking. Coulda, Woulda, Shoulda is where George informs us on other actors who were considered for the parts but didn't get the roles.
So everyone was considered for this, and that's the end of Coulda, Woulda, Shoulda.
Is it easier to say who wasn't?
Yeah.
Pauly Shore missed out.
So
Rob Schneider was considered but didn't get offered.
So it's been... it's quite well known that Will Smith was offered the role of Neo.
Yeah, he's come out about that recently.
Yeah, he came out recently on his YouTube channel, and he said he didn't understand the concept. He wasn't confident they could pull it off. So he decided to go for the safe option and went and made Wild Wild West.
Wild Wild West.
So apparently Johnny Depp was the first choice of the Wachowskis for Neo. Warner Brothers wanted Brad Pitt or Val Kilmer. They both said no. And apparently Ewan McGregor was considered for Neo, but he was tied up doing Star Wars at the same time. Apparently it came down to between Johnny Depp and Keanu Reeves.
I think Val Kilmer could have done a good job. I mean, he's no Keanu, but it would have been interesting.
Yeah, he could have done it.
Because he was doing Batman Forever around this? No, that was earlier.
Batman Forever was 95.
He wouldn't have been in as much of his prime.
Saint? We're around the same time as The Saint, I think.
DVDs,
Sneaker Pimps, 90s. But apparently when it came down to the two of them, Reeves and Depp, it was Keanu who was massively into the concept of it all and the whole philosophy. So I think that's what is...
You can't kill that man's enthusiasm.
His enthusiasm. Enthusiasm.
And apparently, down De Niro.
Apparently for the role of Morpheus, Russell Crowe turned it down. I just didn't get it. I couldn't get past page 42. The world was just not interesting to me.
Oh, interesting.
Gary Oldman was considered for the role of Morpheus. I can see that.
Yeah.
As well as Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, he would have been, well, just beginning his roller coaster ride of film after film after film.
Yeah. And apparently a potential Speed reunion that was never meant to be. Yeah, apparently Sandra Bullock was considered for the role of Trinity, but again, I think turned it down because she wasn't convinced.
Not on board.
Not on board. I think there are plenty of other... I think I read that Leonardo DiCaprio... ironically said, yeah, he didn't want to be in a special effects movie.
Time will tell, Leo.
So yeah, that's quite a few. Bizarrely, I don't think there was many people considered for Agent Smith. I think
there is. Nobody does Hugo
weaving.
Like Hugo.
So yes, that is coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Thank you for that, George. Which brings us to suspicious spin-offs.
Now, yeah, this is a bit of a funny one because the Matrix has been explored in many spin-offs. I mean, yeah, Charlie was talking about we spent a lot of time playing the game. So there was the Path of Neo, which was
a follow-up. That was a
follow-up, but the first one was which
Enter
tied
the Matrix.
Enter the Matrix, which tied into the Matrix Reloaded.
Yes,
because they even filmed. It was a full multimedia experience.
Yeah.
So when the Matrix Reloaded came out, there was the Animatrix, which was 9 short stories
inspired by shared universe,
and they were all essentially spin-offs. I don't remember all of them,
just
but I
remember the quite scary, creepy ones.
Yeah, I remember those.
And the sexy ones.
There was some very sexy ones. I am tempted to go back and watch them, but I remember there being a really cool one with samurais.
Yeah,
and again, it's sort of, I think it was like how far they could bend the rules before something weird happened.
I think what the most interesting thing about the Animatrix is it kind of answers the question that Morpheus and other people from Zion, it's all of the other searches for potentials, because they talk about the potentials, and it's about how all of these people in the Matrix start discovering that they can, and there's even a very weird one where there's a guy running, and that's how he breaks out, and there's a way that you can get out of it.
And isn't there something to do with like ghosts that are sort of, or is it, again, that might be something that's in the films that a bit like the whole reasoning for deja
everything
vu.
That you see vampire. If anybody's seen a vampire or a ghost, what you're seeing is the Matrix.
Is an old a faded program or something like that.
But yeah, I think what's crying out to be made, and I don't know what stage they're at with Matrix 4, if it is ever going to be made, but I think even just from what's given to us in The Matrix, the first film, it's crying out for a prequel.
Yeah, in terms of the first person who sets them free and sets up Zion.
Yeah, the person that Morpheus refers to a long time ago. And that would be, I find, would be rather fulfilling, to get that if it was done right. And I still think ideas for Hollywood, it would work well with an older Morpheus and an older Neo, because you could just have them playing different characters.
Yeah, there's some nice stunt casting you could do there. I mean, there are rumours that Warner Brothers, because obviously, need to make money, and let's look at what franchise we have. They are looking at what they can do with the Matrix. There's talk of getting Michael B. Jordan on board because he's so hot right now. But they hadn't defined whether he'd be playing maybe a young Morpheus. So yeah, there could be potential for that. But yeah, there's so much potential for spin-offs in this, in terms of setting the Matrix around the world. Is it a bit like Dark City? Is the Matrix just one city repeated? Or I think obviously they in the sequels you see them in the mountains. Isn't that French? Is it in a castle or something?
Yeah.
But there's all the different locations you can play with. There's the different abilities that people, all the sort of the hacked, all the cheats essentially. So yeah, I haven't really got a suspicious spin-off of my own in this. But I mean, part of me wants to know what do the operators do when everyone else is in the Matrix having fun? Do they just sit around and play cards, clean their computers?
It must be pretty boring for those guys who can't go in, who are Child of Zion.
So yeah.
So I hope you've enjoyed us going through this film, and it obviously comes from a very deep place of love.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, this is a huge. Was it you that said it's effectively our generation Star Wars?
Yeah, I said that. I think it is. I think it has everything.
You and I were, whilst we're huge Star Wars fans, were that little bit too young to obviously we didn't see it at the cinema. We
missed them the first time round. We watched them
on home video.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were the right age. We were, well, teenagers, or you were just in your...
Yeah, I was 18, 19 when this came out.
And yeah, we can't sort of state how much this made an impact on Hollywood. The whole fight choreography, the whole what became known as wire fu, that would go on. Wu Ping Young would go on to do all the wire work for Crouching Tiger, which was a massive art house breaker, and you could argue that wouldn't have happened. Audiences wouldn't have been so acceptable if it hadn't been for the popularity of The Matrix.
As you mentioned before, we wouldn't have John Wick if it hadn't been for the success.
No John Wick.
And, well, more of the relationship between Chad Stahelski and Keanu.
Obviously, yeah, we talked about your other DVD release, X-Men, which came out a year later. Black leather, there was some slow-mo and sort of bullet time effects there. I think that had another sort of one of our guilty pleasures, and pre-Batman Christian Bale in Equilibrium.
Great B movie.
That's a great B
Matrix
movie.
wannabe.
It is essentially a Matrix rip-off, but
a world ruled by Sean Pertwee's head.
Yeah, so yeah, check
Terrifying.
that out. That's got some good action choreography. Gun Carter.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So I'd say that film's just very baggy in the middle, but the opening scenes of Gun Carter and the closing scenes are brilliant.
Yeah, that's it's almost like a Matrix spin-off in itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it has, and as we've talked about, shows the importance of the fact that we're still using key lines of dialogue for everyday stuff.
So yeah, it's still relevant. I think it's too hot a franchise to be ignored. It will pop up. Not sure how and when. Next time we will be back with...
We are jumping back to the 80s for another very influential sci-fi classic, that is Part Man, Part Machine, All Cop, RoboCop.
Stay out of trouble. Can't wait to do that. Looking forward to that. And we will have a guest.
Yes, we are going to have a special guest.
Great. So that's something to look forward to. Follow us on all of the social medias. Obviously, if you're not already, we are on wherever you get your podcasts. We're on, obviously, Libsyn, but that pushes us out to Spotify, Stitcher, Acast, and the like. So,
and if you are listening via iTunes, please leave us a review, because that does make us more visible to more people. And even if you're not on iTunes, why don't recommend to a friend?
Yeah, and last of all, obviously, there's the blog, retroramble.blog, where we're publishing stuff all of the time, and you can stream the episodes directly without any need for software, just straight out of the webpage. So, that's all from me. I've been Charlie McGee.
I've been George McGee.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Hello. I am the architect. I created The Matrix and several popular video games, including Qbert and Dig Dug. I didn't create Frogger, but I came up with the name for it. Can you believe they wanted to call it Highway Crossing Frog? It's the lamest thing I've ever heard of.
Why am I here?
Although the transport process has altered your consciousness, you irrevocably remain human. Ergo, concordantly, vis-a-vis. You know what? I have no idea what the hell I'm saying. I just thought it would make me sound cool.